Alright, so here we are mixing up the seeds. I've got turnip seeds, radish seeds, and kale. So here's our first stand. This is the south side of the box blind. So we've actually got two spots here by the box blind that we plant. We've got a spot to the south of it, which is looking out of a left-hand window. It's a fairly big spot. Usually the deer will cross the fence. They'll come through this. They'll loop around behind the pecan tree, or they'll come down the trail that comes right in front of the box blind to come over to that area. They'll sometimes graze there. They'll go on the persimmon trees if there's persimmons, and then they'll head down into the woods, or they'll go out into the open field on the neighbor's property and graze over there. So notice I'm just kind of randomly walking around. I'm not doing anything in particular as far as where I'm going to be putting any of the seed or anything. It's all random. I don't want it to be uniform. I want the seeds to be spread more almost like they're natural. So we like to lay out more natural instead of, perfectly in rows like you would see your typical farm ground. And then the last little bit of seed, I just kind of flip it out like that. So this is immediately in front of the box blind. And it's a fairly small spot, but it's usually a really good attractant. Usually turnips grow here really well, and brassicas grow here really well. And they get mowed down in this spot really quickly sometimes. To the point almost that there's been times that we've come in here, even doing these no-till plots like this, that this will be completely bare ground from them mowing the brassicas down. We started mixing clover in to prevent that, and it seemed to work well last year, so we'll come back in a stage 2 kind of seeding, or stage 3 depending on what the weather does this year, and plant some clover. We'll be mixing in some Austrian winter peas later, probably about 50 pounds total for the property is what we'll do. And I usually like to plant this thick. I mean, the ground's really good here, so it can handle a thick planting. And some years we have actually planted all the way down to the wood line, which is about 100 yards. This year I decided we were only going to plant out about 40 yards, which is the farthest you saw me walk. All right, so here's the tower blind. This is the one that I've been really doing a lot of work at this year. You guys have seen me here several times. We put the licking branch here. It's actually right there on the right hand side, if you can see it for a second there. But I don't see the entire field, because what I'm going to do with this one, instead of mixing my peas in with this one, is that far south end and the far north end, I'm going to plant the peas there. That way, if the deer want the peas on either side, they're going to have to go through the entire field to get to them. And then, like last year, what we did is we put some corn in the very center of the field. We'll do that again this year. That worked out really well last year. So this stand's really got me excited this year. I think we'll see a lot of deer come out of this one. We usually see a lot of movement from this one, and this is a really comfortable stand to get up and sit and spend hours and really enjoy the nature and what God's given us. So let's talk about our mixture for a second. While I walk around seeding, I've got as I said, it's turnips, it's kale, and it's radishes. So here's the reason for each one of those mixes. The turnips make the big bulbs, and they give big leafy greens, and the deer love those big leafy greens. But then in the late season, once those leafy greens are gone, the deer will actually come up and pull some of those smaller turnips up, and they'll actually eat them. I mean, I've seen them eat them. If they're about the size of an apple or smaller, they'll eat them. Now, when you get those big ones, that are bigger than an apple, you start getting the size of like a grapefruit. They don't really eat those, but they definitely will eat the smaller ones. And then when those big ones start to rot, they will help out with the ground. All right, so here's the last plot over on the property that we're planting today. This is the ridge plot. I've got to stand back in the woods on this one, on the ridge. We don't usually hunt directly on this plot because we usually catch them on the travel to this one. And by not really putting pressure on the plot, that seems to really keep the deer from running to other people's property and staying around ours. So kind of reasoning for there. So let's talk about the other two seeds. The kale, those are just really tender. They've got a lot of minerals and vitamins that the deer really like, and that really helps them digest, and they're really palatable. So the deer really like those kale. That's the reason we're using kale this year. And then with the radishes, again, big leafy greens that the deer absolutely love, and they're really good. Now, as far as the actual tuber, the deer, from what I've seen, I've never seen them eat radishes before. I mean, maybe they could surprise me one year and actually eat some, but they typically don't eat those radishes. I mean, we could definitely pick them and eat them, but these make these big, long, white radishes. They go down into the dirt quite a ways, and then they rot, and they help out with the organic matter, especially with us coming back through later and putting in clover. That definitely will help the clover, and it helps the ground overall. I mean, you can see just the the weed growth here. So all right, so this is what a no-till food plot does for you. You can see I've got clover 8 to 10 inches tall, probably a quarter acre of it. So because I'm not tilling this, I'm not killing this, and this gets to stay in my food plot for next year and the year after, and it'll keep spreading. This white Dutch clover spreads really well. It's a really good food plot clover to have. That's what I would prefer out of any of the clovers. So you just saw me plant turnips, radish, and kale. What'll happen tomorrow, if it's not raining first thing in the morning, I'll bring the tractor over. I'll brush hog each one of the plots that we planted. That'll lay everything over on top of it. I mean, the seeds are so small, they're already touching the ground anyways, and they're on the mulch from last year. But that'll just help it protect it a little bit more, and it'll also help collect the moisture from the dews every morning. That'll help it germinate, and it'll also help it compete with all the other weeds, because I'm not going to spray glyphosate or anything on these plots. My theory is the less artificial compounds you can use, herbicides, fertilizers, the better you are. So that's kind of the plan for these food plots. Now, the one at the house, it's going to be a new food plot this year. I'm going to spray that one just because it is mostly this Johnson grass like this, and that stuff grows like crazy. So we will spray that one when we brush hog. It might be this evening, it might be tomorrow morning, but I will spray that one. I'll probably do it. I'll probably spray it tomorrow morning. I'm going to seed it tonight, but we'll spray it tomorrow morning when I brush hog, since I'll have the tractor out anyways. So stick with us. All right, so here's the last plot that we're going to plant today. I planted this one in the evening because it was already way too hot by the time we got back to the house. This is one back behind the house that we've talked about that's going to be a new plot. And look at how tall that Johnson grass is. Remember, we just brush hogged this a couple weeks ago. So you think I'm kidding about how fast this stuff grows? This stuff just grows. I mean, look, I'm right there. I'm only 5, maybe 6 yards into it, and you can just barely see me there. I mean, it's so thick, it's so tall that I'm actually having to sidestep and basically push a path through this stuff. And then when I started spinning the spreader, I noticed, oh, the seed's only going about 6 or 8 inches in front of me, and it's hitting all this Johnson grass and falling down. So I actually would go about 3 feet. I would stop hold the cedar up over my head, and you can see me doing it right there. Hold the cedar up over my head, and spin it, and then do that again. Go about 3-4 foot, stop, reach up over my head, spin it, and I would kind of do it in like a circle almost. And I did that all the way through. So a couple times you can see like a bucket sticking up over that. That's me spinning that cedar around, trying to get the seed to spread. We may, after we brush hog this one and spray it, I may actually come back in maybe a week to 2 weeks and put a second planting of brassicas here, just because I'm not really sure what's going to happen here, because it was thicker and taller than I anticipated. If it had been about 3 or 4 foot, I could have made it work. It would have actually worked out perfect at the height. But because it got so tall, I mean, look at that one right there next to my hand. I mean, I'm lifting up that cedar at 7 foot, and that thing was still sticking up another 2 foot above me. I didn't realize that earlier. So, I mean, there's some spots in there. I think I say here in a minute, 7 to 8 foot. That's probably like more like 10 foot high. So, we may have to seed this one again. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Wow, that's tall. I got in there and it was 2 foot over my head. It's easily 8 foot in there in some places. I didn't expect that. So I had to mash it down, had to hold the cedar way up over my head to make sure the seed was spreading. But tomorrow I'm going to come in here with the brush hog down the areas that I planted. And then I'm going to spray it with glyphosate. Glyphosate is kind of a contact, so once it's sprayed, it'll kill everything that's living. My seeds that I just planted won't be affected by it. And that should give me a lot of mulch to put on there, and should really help. I mean, this place has got, you can tell the soil is already good here anyways because of how tall this is growing. But just Johnson's grass just skyrockets like this when you mow it. I actually had to punch down trail to get through there, but I got it seeded all good and well. I've got it right up in here where we're standing seeded. This should be a pretty good little plot, especially since I'm going to leave kind of a screening on that side. They'll have a screening on the back. So what I'm envisioning for the deer is they should come down, straight down here, down this trail. We'll have the licking branch right here where we're standing. I'm pretty sure that's where I've decided I'm going to put it. We'll have the licking branch right here. They're going to hit that. They're going to have brassicas right in here where we're standing as well, off into that plot. They'll go in there and they'll eat. We'll probably put like a corn feeder or something here as well. And this is going to be a stand that when I approach it, so let's talk about that. We haven't talked about that at this location. So behind that cherry tree right there is going to be where the stand's at, in that oak tree. So when I approach it, I can actually come from this side over here. So I can walk down that fence row. On that side, I'll have it mowed down so it's not too tall and I don't get soaking wet in mornings when it's heavy dew or something. But I'll be able to come down there real nice and quiet, get up into that stand without anything that's in the plot knowing that I'm there. And again, I've got some limbs we still have to trim out of the way. Once we get those trimmed, we'll still pile up that kind of screening in front of it like I talked about in an earlier video. We'll have that screening there. Be able to get up in the stand. They won't know I'm here. I'll be able to get down out of the stand and leave, even with deer in this plot. So that'll be really good for this stand. So if I'm have a late meeting or something, have to stay late at work, I have plenty of time to get from the house to here. I mean, the only time I would get busted is if a deer was out in this field, or if one was walking up this edge. And even if they're walking up this edge, I don't think they're going to notice me back over there. I mean, unless they're almost to the stand, which I doubt that's going to happen. But that's kind of the plan.
I think I'm really kind of excited about this plot right here specifically because it is so close to the house. They're going to be used to my smell, my noise outside. So if the wind does happen to catch and blow over here, it's not going to be as big of a deal as maybe hunting at the other property. So definitely excited about this stand. I'm going to go back to the house now and probably jump in the pool with Desi and Hunter. I've saved a little bit of seed. I'm going to plant in both of the deer pens. I want them to have some brassicas in those couple of those bare spots in the pen with all the ryegrass, and then just a couple spots in the other pen. That way it's growing in there and they've got that nutrition. So I'll get this edited later, throw it onto YouTube. Let me know what you want to hear. I'm trying to work on some different topics that I can discuss in future videos. It's really hot. It's like 102 right now. Not counting heat index. I think heat index is over 110. I'm in the shade, so it's not as bad, but it's still real hot. I'm sure the pool's going to be real hot too. But let me know what you guys would like to see, on future videos. You want me to go in more depth on these no-till food plots? You want me to go in depth on if you want to till a food plot, how you should do that? I mean, I've done those before. I can definitely talk you through that. Let me talk you through my different stage plan that I do when I plant these food plots. You notice I'm just planting brassicas today. I'll plant winter peas at a different time. I'll plant clover at a different time. So if you want me to talk about those different stagings that I do when I do the plantings, I'll be happy to get in that a little bit more detail. So stay tuned. There'll be more coming. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like for more.